Alright, so I'm working on a little project on one of my bikes tonight. The one in the middle there is my green bike, the one that I call my green machine, as you can see in the text written on the body. Basically, I've had this bike since 2010, since the fall of 2010. So it's just reaching the 4-year mark that I've had it. And it was my primary bike for a good 2.5 years before I got my Rally Sport, which is my newer bike. It's a hybrid bike, so it's kind of my bike of choice for riding around the city, but I still use my green machine as a backup. And I also use it quite a bit in the winter because I put my studded winter snow tires on my green machine. I use it, on all the days when it's either icy or snowy on the road. I used to really love riding this bike. It used to be like my favorite, really until I got this one. And now every time that something goes wrong on my rally and I have to use my backup, it's always feels like a big letdown, and I kind of feel uncomfortable riding it. I find that the handlebar position is no longer very comfortable for me. I feel like there's a lot of pressure on my hands. So I always try and ride this one whenever possible, but I really like to improve this bike so it's as enjoyable to ride as my rally. So a few weeks ago I noticed that this bike was sitting on the curb. Someone was throwing it out. It's one that's been sitting out in the elements, sitting outdoors for a long time. It's very rusty. All the cables and everything are totally seized and everything. You can't even squeeze the brakes at all on it. So it's in really rough shape. But what I saw on this bike that really jumped out at me was these handlebars. They got this big riser thing on it, and the handlebars are nice and curved on each side, and they're quite far apart. So I'm thinking if I'm able to take these handlebars off, the handlebars and the stem are actually all one piece. I would like to be able to take these off and try them on this bike, and see if it makes it any better and more comfortable for riding. So for today, what I'm going to try and do is I'm going to try and see if I can get these off, that'll include getting off the grips and the shift levers as well as the brake arms, because I'd like to use definitely the brakes and the shift levers that are on this bike. So let's start off by seeing if we can get these handlebars off. So I have made a video before showing how to take this part of the bike apart. So if you're not that familiar with it, you can go and watch that video. But you need an Allen key for this bike, which goes up here. Sometimes it's a socket bolt that goes up, and I just loosen it off a little bit. And I'm imagining this is going to be pretty rusted on there, so it's going to be pretty hard to get off. I'm just going to loosen off a little bit and see if I can just, it's actually not hard to get off at all. So basically I just hold the wheel between my legs and just jiggle this back and forth. And if it was going to be seized, then what I would do is I would hammer on the top of this bolt to be able to unseize it, but it just came undone very easily just by wiggling it back and forth. So that part of it's really easy. And this is tricky because it has these center pull kind of brakes, so I have to disengage those to be able to lift this off, I guess. And there she's off. That looks like it's in pretty good condition. If I can get all this stuff off easy enough, then this should be a really easy job. So I've been working on taking off my rubber handlebar grips here, and it's a surprisingly hard task to do. If you try and just spin it back and forth or try and pull on it, it seems impossible to take off. And a lot of people will try for a few minutes and they'll say this is impossible, and they'll just get their knife out and they'll just cut them off. In this situation, these handlebar grips are actually in pretty much mint condition. There's no damage to them. They're actually in better condition than the ones that I have on my green bike right now. So I'd really like to save them. So basically what I did first is I loosened off the brake lever and the shifter, just pushed them over this way, out of my way, so I have a little bit better access to the ends here. A trick that I was showing a few years ago for taking these off was if you have an air compressor, you can get the nozzle and you can spray it in different locations underneath, all the way around the outside here. And by doing that, I guess you're kind of you're separating the rubber, which is creating all the friction, from touching the inside of the metal tubing that is your handlebars. So that I've tried that before and it works really, really well, but I don't have an air compressor now. I did try using my hand pump, but I really don't have the right kind of nozzle to be able to spray air in there properly. So I decided to try something a little bit different. So like as I said, if you try and spin this, like it doesn't move at all. Like, and if you try and pull on it, you really can't get it to go. So I decided I would try my adjustable wrench, and I've just put it on there. I've got it so it's sized so that it fits nice and snugly over top of here. And basically what I'm doing, with this extra gap that I created there, is I just pull this back and forth, and I'm essentially just hammering this off. And very easily I'm able to remove my rubber handlebar grip, which means I'm then able to also remove my brake lever and my shift lever as well. So now with everything removed off of my handlebars and this bolt here loosened so that this is able to move, I should be able to pull this all the way out like that, and there I've got my handlebars / stem to be able to put on this bike here. Alright, so I repeated the process on this bike. I got the handlebar grips off. I've still got all of the levers and everything still sitting on here. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the new handlebars, which I've just cleaned up. I just sprayed some household cleaner on them and wiped them down. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to put them so they're side by side like that, and then I'm going to transfer each item one by one from here to there, except I have to take each item off in the order and then put them back on in the opposite order, basically, so that they'll be in the same order when they're on here. So first is my brake lever, like that, and I'll just hold that in my hand so I don't move and lose the position of the cables and everything. So that's going to sit like that, with that, and then my bell comes off. So the first thing I'll slide on down here is my bell, followed by my shift leader, which goes in this orientation, and my brake lever, which goes like that. I'm not going to worry about getting them tightened or positioned yet. I'm just going to move over to the other side and do the same thing. So there we've got that. Now I just have to take these old bars off, so I'll be able to install the new ones in the hole there. So this headset has a hex head instead of an Allen head like the other one had. So I'm going to put my socket on there. This is a 13mm one that fits on there. And I'm just going to loosen that off a little bit. Something like that. And I'll try the test that I did before to see if I can break it loose. And it really doesn't want to break loose, so I'm going to grab my hammer instead. And with a little bit of this sticking up, I'm just going to give a single little tap on the end of there. And that's pushed this down, and now it's loose, which means that this can be moved back and forth from side to side. And I should be able to lift this out. Like that. And then this one should be able to go in its place, and hopefully I haven't tangled these cables at all. I think they're still in the right positions. And get the right size. Goes in there like that. Alright, so I want to get this so that it's kind of far up. Something like that. And now I'll tighten it in place. So this basically has a minimum insertion line, and I want to get it, as close to that as possible, so it'll be nice and high up, so it'll be more comfortable for having my hands on these handlebars. And then I just put lots of tension on here, so it's not going to move. Alright, so I've had these handlebars on the bike for a few days now, and I took it for a really long test ride yesterday. And so far I'm really loving having these handlebars on the bike. I'm just finding that they're so much more comfortable than the ones that I had on there before. I think the main difference is that they're a lot longer, so your arms are spread apart wider, and it's more of a comfortable position. Of course, as well, you know, the handlebars are a little bit higher as well, which I do realize means that you're in less of an aerodynamic position. But keep in mind, this bike is really intended for riding in the city, and in the city, you know, wind isn't a huge factor because, you know, there's lots of buildings and stuff, and you know, I don't really find that I notice the effect from the wind that much. I do find, you know, the effect of hills is a lot more significant than the effect of wind. So the only thing which is left to complete this task is to reinstall my handlebar mirror back on here. And I had been holding off on doing that because to install one of these mirrors, you have to cut a hole in the end of your handlebar grips. And as I said, these handlebar grips are pretty much in mint condition, so I didn't want to cut a hole in them until I was sure that I was going to use them. But as I said yesterday, I was really happy with them. But I was certainly noticing that I didn't have a mirror. You know, every time I heard, you know, something coming up behind me, I'd look down in this area to see, you know, if there was someone coming, and of course there wasn't a mirror there. So I definitely would like to install that. So we'll do that right now. So to cut this hole here, I'm going to use my pocket knife, but you can really use just about any kind of a knife. You know, a utility knife or even a kitchen knife would work. So I'm just going to poke that in the end there. There's the first little cut. Another one right there. Work my way around. Doesn't need to be a perfect circle. Alright, so there's the little piece that I pulled out, and there's our hole there. The hole doesn't need to be you know, as big as the whole end there, just as long as the plastic piece here can fit through it, like so. There we go. So just get that into the position where you want it, and then my Allen key goes in the end here, and this just tightens on the same way that the stem tightens on over here. So just tighten the bolts, and this will start to get tight, and there you have it. So anyway, that concludes this video showing my free handlebar upgrade to my Green Machine bike. You're not always going to be able to depend on finding a free bike that's going to have the exact parts that you want to do any kind of an upgrade. But every time that you do happen to stumble upon a free bike, something that someone's throwing away, there's a very good chance that there's going to be parts on that bike that you'll be able to make use of someday, even if, you know, the majority of the bike is in really rough condition and really rusty, like the one that I found. So always keep that in mind, and thanks for watching.